The early morning light filtered through the heavy curtains of Kensington Palace as Kate Middleton stood before her bedroom mirror, her hands trembling slightly as she applied a touch of lipstick. The reflection staring back at her showed a composed woman, but behind her eyes lay a storm of emotions that threatened to break free at any moment. She had barely slept the night before, tossing and turning as her mind raced through all the possibilities of what this day might bring. William had been equally restless, getting up twice during the night to check his phone and pace around their bedroom like a caged animal. The phone call had come 3 days earlier, on a Tuesday afternoon when Kate was helping Charlotte with her homework and the boys were playing in the garden. The official tone of the caller's voice had immediately put her on edge, and when she heard the words that followed, her world had tilted on its axis. She had called for William immediately, her voice catching in her throat as she tried to relay the information. He had dropped everything, rushing to her side with a look of concern that deepened as she explained what they had just learned. Now, as Kate fastened her pearl earrings, she could hear William in their adjoining dressing room, the sound of hangers sliding across the rail as he searched for the right tie. They had discussed what to wear for this occasion, knowing that whatever they chose would be scrutinized by the media and the public. But more importantly, they wanted to look strong and unified, not just for the cameras but for each other and for what they were about to face. The palace staff moved around them with unusual quietness. Sensing the weight of the day ahead, Mrs. Patterson, Kate's lady-in-waiting, had arrived earlier than usual and had been exceptionally gentle in her assistance, understanding without words that this was not an ordinary royal engagement. The usual morning chatter about schedules and appearances was replaced by soft-spoken offers of tea, and gentle inquiries about comfort. George, Charlotte, and Louis had been unusually subdued at breakfast, picking at their food while stealing glances at their parents. Children have an uncanny ability to sense when something significant is happening, even when adults try to shield them from worry. Kate had knelt down to their level before they left for school, holding each of them a little longer than usual, breathing in their familiar scent and drawing strength from their innocent faces. William emerged from the dressing room, adjusting his navy blue tie for what must have been the 10th time. His usually confident demeanor was tinged with nervousness, something Kate had rarely seen in their years together. He was a man who had faced countless public appearances, difficult conversations with world leaders, and the constant pressure of royal duty, but today was different. Today was personal in a way that no amount of training or preparation could have readied him for. They stood together in front of the full-length mirror, not speaking but drawing comfort from each other's presence. Kate reached over and straightened William's tie, a simple gesture that had become routine over their years of marriage. He placed his hand over hers, their eyes meeting in the reflection, and in that moment they communicated everything they needed to say without uttering a single word. The security briefing had been thorough but discreet. Their protection officers understood the sensitive nature of their destination and had planned the route carefully to avoid as much media attention as possible. But they all knew that despite their best efforts, word would leak, cameras would be waiting, and their private moment of anxiety would become public knowledge before the day was over. Kate's phone buzzed with a text message from her sister Pippa, offering love and support. She had confided in her family about the situation, needing their emotional anchor during this difficult time. Her parents had offered to come and stay with the children, understanding that William and Kate needed to focus entirely on what lay ahead without worrying about daily routines and school pickups. The breakfast they had barely touched sat cooling on the table in their private dining room. Neither of them had much appetite, their stomachs churning with anticipation and worry. William had managed only a few sips of coffee, while Kate had nibbled on a piece of toast before pushing the plate away. As they prepared to leave their private quarters, Kate took one last look around their bedroom, as if trying to memorize this moment before everything changed. The comfortable familiarity of their personal space, filled with family photos and mementos from their life together, seemed like a sanctuary they were reluctant to leave. William checked his watch, noting that their car would be arriving in 5 minutes. He had learned over the years that punctuality was not just about respect for others' time, but also about maintaining the discipline and structure that helped him cope with stressful situations. Today, that structure felt more important than ever. They walked down the palace corridors together, their footsteps echoing softly on the polished floors. Staff members they passed offered discreet nods of acknowledgement, their faces reflecting the same concern and support that had surrounded the couple all morning. The palace, usually bustling with activity and official business, seemed to hold its breath as they made their way to the entrance dot at the main door. Their private secretary waited with final details about their schedule and gentle reminders about media protocol. But both William and Kate barely heard the words, their minds already focused on their destination and what awaited them there. The morning that had started with such careful preparation and nervous energy was about to transition into a journey that would test every ounce of strength and courage they possessed. The black car sat waiting in the courtyard, its engine running, quietly, ready to carry them toward a day that would forever be etched in their memories. The leather seats of the royal car felt unusually cold against Kate's back as she settled in beside William. Their driver, James, had been with them for nearly 5 years and knew without being told that today required extra discretion and care. He adjusted the rearview mirror slightly and caught Kate's eye, offering a small nod of reassurance before focusing his attention on the road ahead. The car pulled away from Kensington Palace with unusual quietness, the only sound being the soft hum of the engine and the distant noise of London traffic. William stared out the tinted window at the familiar streets of their neighborhood. But his mind was miles away from the shop fronts and pedestrians they passed. His hands rested on his knees, fingers occasionally tapping an anxious rhythm that Kate had learned to recognize over their years together. She wanted to reach out and still his nervous movement, but she understood that sometimes people needed physical outlets for their worry. Her own hands were clasped tightly in her lap, her knuckles white with the force of her grip. The route James had chosen took them through Hyde Park, where early morning joggers and dog walkers went about their daily routines completely unaware that the future king and queen were passing by just a few feet away. Kate watched a young mother pushing a stroller while talking animatedly on her phone, probably discussing ordinary things like grocery lists or weekend plans. The normalcy of the scene made Kate's chest tighten with emotion as she thought about how drastically their own normal had been disrupted 3 days ago. Traffic began to thicken as they approached central London, and James skillfully navigated through the maze of cars, buses, and delivery trucks that clogged the streets during morning rush hour. William checked his phone for the 3rd time in 10 minutes, not really expecting any new messages but needing something to occupy his hands and mind. The phone call they were expecting wouldn't come until later, but the anticipation of it made every minute feel like an hour. Kate's thoughts drifted to the conversation she had with her mother the night before. Carol Middleton had listened patiently as Kate poured out her fears and concerns, offering the kind of maternal wisdom that only comes from years of watching your children face their own challenges. Her mother had reminded her that strength wasn't about never feeling scared or worried, but about continuing to move forward despite those feelings. The words had brought Kate some comfort, but they hadn't erased the knot of anxiety that had taken up permanent residence in her stomach. The car slowed as they encountered a red light, and William noticed a small crowd gathered outside a coffee shop, probably waiting for their morning caffeine fix before heading to work. He envied their simple concerns and straightforward problems. How different his life might have been if he had been born into ordinary circumstances, where the biggest worry of the day might be whether to order a large or small coffee. But then he looked at Kate, and he knew that no matter what circumstances had brought them together, he wouldn't trade their life for anything. James caught sight of a photographer with a long lens camera positioned near a bus stop and smoothly changed lanes to avoid giving the man a clear shot. The constant presence of media was something they had long ago accepted as part of their reality, but today it felt more intrusive than usual. Every photo taken, every speculation printed, would add to the pressure they were already feeling. William made a mental note to ask their press secretary to handle any inquiries with extra care and sensitivity. The conversation with their children that morning had been carefully planned but emotionally draining. They had decided to be honest about the fact that they were going somewhere important, but they had kept the details vague to avoid causing unnecessary worry. Charlotte had asked the most questions, her perceptive nature picking up on the undercurrents of tension that William and Kate were trying to hide. George had been quieter than usual, perhaps sensing that adult conversations were happening around him that he wasn't quite old enough to fully understand. Kate's phone buzzed with a text from her brother James, who was checking in to see how they were holding up. She appreciated the gesture but couldn't bring herself to respond just yet. Words felt inadequate for describing the mixture of hope and fear that was churning inside her. Instead, she simply held the phone, drawing comfort from the knowledge that her family was thinking of them. The car turned onto a busier street, and William noticed that James was taking a longer route than usual, probably trying to avoid areas where they might encounter heavy media presence. The extra time in the car was both a blessing and a curse. It gave them more time to mentally prepare for what lay ahead, but it also extended the period of anxious anticipation that was wearing on both of them. Kate found herself studying William's profile as he continued to stare out the window. She had memorized every line of his face over their years together, but today she noticed new tension around his eyes and mouth. The weight of responsibility that he carried as future king was always present, but today it seemed to press down on him with unusual force. She wanted to remind him that they were in this together, that whatever they faced, they would face it as a team. The London skyline stretched out before them, a mixture of historic buildings and modern developments that told the story of a city, constantly evolving while holding on to its past. William thought about the countless royal journeys that had taken place along these same streets over the centuries, wondering if any of his ancestors had ever felt the same mixture of duty and personal anxiety that he was experiencing now. As they neared their destination, Kate noticed that her hands had stopped trembling. The initial shock and fear of 3 days ago had settled into a steadier, more manageable kind of nervousness. She had found her center, that place of calm strength that had carried her through countless public appearances and personal challenges. Whatever was waiting for them at the end of this journey, she was ready to face it with grace and courage. The car began to slow as they approached their final destination, and both William and Kate straightened in their seats, preparing to step back into their public roles while carrying the weight of their private concerns. The imposing glass and steel structure of Great Ormond Street Hospital rose before them like a beacon of hope and heartbreak combined. William felt his breath catch in his throat as their car pulled into the circular drive, the familiar butterfly logo of the Children's Hospital instantly recognizable even through his nervous haze. Kate's hand instinctively reached for his, their fingers intertwining in a grip that spoke of shared strength and mutual support. This wasn't their first visit to the renowned Children's Hospital, but today felt entirely different from their previous official engagements and charity visits. James brought the car to a gentle stop near the main entrance, where a small group of hospital administrators waited to greet them. Despite the early hour, a handful of photographers had already positioned themselves across the street, their long lenses trained on the royal vehicle. William could see the camera flashes beginning even before they stepped out of the car, each bright burst of light a reminder that their most private moments would soon become public knowledge. Kate straightened her navy blue dress and checked her appearance one final time in her compact mirror, not out of vanity but because she knew that composure was sometimes the greatest gift she could offer in situations like these. Dr. Patricia Henderson, the hospital's chief executive, approached their car with a warm but professional smile. She had been briefed extensively about the sensitive nature of this visit and understood the delicate balance between providing the royal couple with privacy and ensuring they received the information and support they needed. Her years of experience dealing with families in crisis had taught her that sometimes the most powerful comfort came from simple human presence, rather than elaborate words or gestures. As William and Kate stepped out of the car, they were immediately struck by the sounds of the hospital around them. Unlike the sterile quiet they had expected, the building hummed with life and activity. Children's laughter echoed from somewhere within the walls, mixed with the gentle voices of nurses and the soft beeping of medical equipment. The juxtaposition of joy and suffering, hope and fear, that existed within these walls was something both of them had encountered during their charity work, but experiencing it on a personal level felt entirely different. The hospital lobby was filled with families, at various stages of their own journeys. Some sat together in quiet conversation, while others paced nervously near the information desk. A young father held his sleeping toddler while his wife filled out paperwork, both of them wearing the exhausted but determined expression that Kate had come to recognize as the look of parents fighting for their children. An elderly couple sat, hand in hand near the large windows, probably grandparents keeping vigil during a difficult time. Dr. Henderson guided them toward a quieter area of the lobby, speaking in low tones about the hospital's recent developments and the progress being made in pediatric care. William and Kate nodded politely, but their attention was divided between her words and their own internal preparation for what lay ahead. The information they were receiving was important, but their minds kept jumping ahead to the moment they had been both anticipating and dreading for the past 3 days. The elevator ride to the 7th floor felt endless despite lasting only 30 seconds. Kate watched the numbers change above the door, each floor bringing them closer to their destination and further from the relative safety of not knowing. William stood beside her, his military training evident in his straight posture and steady breathing, but she could see the tension in his jaw and the way his hands clasped behind his back. They had faced many challenges together as a couple and as members of the royal family, but nothing had prepared them for the intensity of this particular moment. The pediatric ward was decorated with colorful murals and cheerful artwork designed to make young patients feel more comfortable, but the underlying seriousness of the environment was impossible to ignore. Nurses moved efficiently between rooms, carrying charts and medications with the kind of practiced precision that spoke of years spent caring for seriously ill children. The hallway was lined with family photos and thank you cards from former patients, testimonials to both the skill of the medical staff and the resilience of the human spirit. Dr. Matthews joined them at the elevator, introducing herself as the head of the pediatric cardiac unit. Her gentle manner and kind eyes immediately put both William and Kate at ease, even as the specific mention of cardiac care sent a fresh wave of anxiety through both of them. She explained that they would be meeting with the full medical team before proceeding, ensuring that they had all the information they needed to understand what they were about to encounter. The conference room they entered was small but comfortable, with soft lighting and chairs arranged in a circle rather than the formal boardroom setup they might have expected. The medical team that greeted them consisted of doctors, nurses, and specialists who had been working around the clock for the past several days. Their faces showed the same mixture of professional competence and human compassion that had drawn William and Kate to support this hospital through their charitable work over the years. As the medical team began their briefing, Kate found herself studying their faces, looking for clues about what they might be about to see. The doctors spoke in measured tones about procedures and outcomes, using medical terminology that they carefully explained in layman's terms. William asked detailed questions about timelines and prognosis, his analytical mind seeking concrete information to help him process the emotional weight of the situation. The conversation lasted nearly 20 minutes, covering everything from immediate concerns to long-term implications. Both William and Kate listened intently, occasionally exchanging glances that communicated volumes about their shared fears and hopes. The medical team was clearly experienced in delivering difficult information to families, balancing honesty with sensitivity in a way that provided necessary facts without destroying hope. As the briefing concluded, Dr. Matthews stood in smooth her white coat, preparing to escort them to their final destination. The moment they had been building toward for 3 days was now just minutes away, and both William and Kate felt their hearts begin to race with anticipation. They stood together, straightened their clothes, and prepared to face whatever awaited. them down the hospital corridor, knowing that their lives were about to change in ways they couldn't yet imagine. The corridor stretched before them like a pathway between their old life and whatever awaited them beyond the next few minutes. William and Kate walked side by side, their footsteps creating a gentle rhythm on the polished hospital floor that seemed to echo the beating of their hearts. Dr. Matthews led the way with the quiet confidence of someone who had guided countless families through similar journeys, her white coat flowing behind her as she navigated the familiar hallways with practiced ease. Other families passed by in both directions, each carrying their own stories of hope and heartbreak. Kate noticed a young mother carrying a small teddy bear, her eyes red from crying but her chin lifted with determination. An older man sat alone on a bench near the windows, staring out at the London skyline while clutching a cup of coffee that had probably gone cold hours ago. These glimpses into other people's most vulnerable moments reminded both William and Kate that they were part of a larger community of families who understood the unique mixture of fear and love that had brought them to this place. The walls were lined with photographs and artwork created by former patients, colorful drawings of rainbows and flowers mixed with thank you letters written in childish handwriting. One drawing caught Kate's attention as they passed, a simple sketch of a family holding hands under a bright yellow sun with the words, "Thank you for making me better," written in purple crayon at the bottom. The innocent optimism of the artwork stood in stark contrast to the serious medical equipment and monitors that could be glimpsed through partially open doorways. William found himself counting the room numbers as they walked, a nervous habit he had developed during stressful situations. Each number brought them closer to their destination and further from the relative safety of uncertainty. His military training had taught him to face difficult situations head-on, but this was different from any challenge he had ever encountered. This was personal in a way that no amount of preparation could have readied him for. Dr. Matthews paused at a nursing station to speak quietly with one of the staff members, and William and Kate took the opportunity to collect themselves. They stood close together, drawing strength from each other's presence without needing to speak. Kate adjusted her handbag on her shoulder and smoothed her hair, small gestures that helped her maintain her composure in the face of overwhelming emotion. William checked his watch, not because the time mattered, but because it was something familiar and routine in a moment that felt anything but normal. The conversation at the nursing station seemed to stretch on forever, though it probably lasted less than a minute. Both William and Kate found themselves studying the faces of the medical staff, looking for clues about what they might be about to encounter. The nurses moved with the kind of gentle efficiency that spoke of years spent caring for critically ill children, their expressions professional yet compassionate. As they went about their duties, a young boy in a wheelchair rolled past them with his mother walking alongside, chatting cheerfully about his favorite television show. The child's obvious illness was evident in his pale complexion and the medical equipment attached to his chair, but his bright smile and animated conversation served as a powerful reminder of the resilience and joy that children could maintain, even in the most difficult circumstances. Kate felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes as she watched them disappear around the corner, the boy's laughter still echoing in the hallway. Dr. Matthews returned to them with a gentle smile and began walking again, leading them down a shorter corridor toward their final destination. The lighting here was softer and more subdued, designed to create a calmer atmosphere for families dealing with serious medical situations. The sound of their footsteps seemed louder in this quieter section of the hospital, each step marking their progress toward a moment that would forever change their understanding of what it meant to face their worst fears. William's mind raced through all the conversations they had shared over the past 3 days, the late-night discussions about worst-case scenarios and best-case outcomes. They had tried to prepare themselves for every possibility, but he was beginning to realize that no amount of mental preparation could truly ready them for the reality of what they were about to face. Kate walked beside him with the grace and poise that had become second nature over their years in the public eye, but he could see the tension in her shoulders and the way her breathing had become slightly more shallow. The corridor seemed to stretch endlessly before them, though they couldn't have been walking for more than a few minutes. Time had taken on a strange quality since they had entered the hospital, minutes feeling like hours while simultaneously seeming to pass too quickly. Kate found herself wanting to slow down and speed up at the same time, desperate to reach their destination while also terrified of what they might find there. Dr. Matthews slowed her pace as they approached a cluster of rooms near the end of the hallway. She turned to face them with the kind of expression that medical professionals develop when they need to deliver important information to anxious families. Her voice was gentle but clear as she began to explain what they would see and what they should expect in the next few minutes. The words washed over both William and Kate like waves, some information sinking in while other details seemed to float, just beyond their ability to fully process. The final few steps felt like the longest journey of their lives. Kate reached for William's hand, their fingers intertwining in a grip that spoke of shared strength and mutual support. They had faced many challenges together over their years as a couple and as members of the royal family, but nothing had prepared them for the intensity of this moment. The door to their destination stood before them now, just a few feet away, representing the bridge between their fears and whatever reality awaited them on the other side. Dr. Matthews positioned herself beside the door, her hand resting gently on the handle as she prepared to open it. The hallway around them seemed to fade away, the sounds of the busy hospital becoming distant background noise as William and Kate focused entirely on what was about to unfold before them. Dr. Matthews paused with her hand on the door handle, turning to face William and Kate with the kind of gentle expression that came from years of guiding families through life-changing moments. Her voice was soft but clear as she began to explain what they would encounter in the room beyond. The medical equipment they would see might look frightening at first glance, she told them, but every machine and monitor was there to help and support rather than cause alarm. William nodded slowly, his jaw set with the kind of determination that had carried him through countless difficult situations. While Kate's grip on his hand tightened almost imperceptibly, the sounds of the hospital seemed to fade away as they stood in that corridor, the busy noise of nurses and visitors becoming distant background music to the thundering of their own heartbeats. Kate found herself focusing on the small details around them, the way the afternoon light filtered through the windows at the end of the hallway, the soft hum of the air conditioning system, the gentle squeak of a wheelchair somewhere in the distance. These ordinary sounds and sights felt precious somehow, like anchors to normalcy in a moment that felt anything but normal. William's mind raced through all the conversations they had shared with the medical team, trying to organize the information they had received into something manageable and understandable. The doctors had been thorough in their explanations, but medical terminology and statistical probabilities felt inadequate when faced with the reality of what lay beyond the door. He thought about the phone call that had started this journey 3 days ago, how the calm voice on the other end had delivered news that had turned their world upside down in the space of a few sentences. Kate's thoughts drifted to their children, probably sitting in their classrooms at school right now, focused on lessons and playground games while completely unaware of the drama unfolding in their parents' lives. She had kissed each of them goodbye that morning with extra tenderness, holding them just a moment longer than usual and breathing in their familiar scent. The normalcy of their morning routine had felt like a blessing and a burden at the same time, a reminder of all the ordinary moments that made life precious. Dr. Matthews continued her gentle explanation, describing the specialized team of nurses and doctors who had been working around the clock for the past several days. These medical professionals had seen every kind of situation imaginable, she assured them, and they were prepared to answer any questions and provide any support that William and Kate might need. The confidence in her voice was reassuring, but both of them understood that medical expertise could only go so far in situations like these. The corridor around them felt suspended in time, as if the entire hospital was holding its breath along with them. Other families had walked this same path before them, facing their own moments of truth and transformation. Kate wondered how many tears had been shed in this hallway, how many prayers had been whispered, how many hands had been held in the exact spot where they now stood. The weight of all that shared human experience felt both comforting and overwhelming. William found himself studying Dr. Matthews' face, looking for clues about what they were about to encounter. Her expression was carefully neutral, the kind of professional composure that medical professionals developed when dealing with families in crisis. But he could see kindness in her eyes, a genuine warmth that suggested she truly cared about the people she was guiding through these difficult moments. That small spark of human connection felt like a lifeline in an ocean of uncertainty. The conversation seemed to stretch on forever, though it probably lasted only a few minutes. Every word Dr. Matthews spoke was important, but William and Kate found their attention divided between her explanations and their own internal preparation for what was coming next. They had discussed this moment countless times over the past 3 days, trying to imagine what it would feel like, what they would see, how they would react. But now that they were actually here, all their mental preparation felt inadequate. Kate noticed that her hands had stopped trembling, replaced by a steady calm that surprised her. The initial shock and terror of 3 days ago had settled into something more manageable, a focused determination that reminded her of the strength she had discovered during childbirth and other challenging moments in her life. She was ready to face whatever lay beyond that door, not because she was unafraid, but because love and duty demanded that she move forward despite her fear. The medical team had prepared them as thoroughly as possible, but both William and Kate understood that some experiences could only be understood by living through them. They had read everything they could find, asked every question they could think of, and consulted with experts from around the world. But ultimately, this moment belonged to them alone, a private reckoning with circumstances that no amount of research or preparation could fully prepare them for. Dr. Matthews glanced at her watch and mentioned that the timing was perfect, that the afternoon shift had just begun and the room would be at its quietest and most peaceful. She had clearly orchestrated this moment with the kind of careful attention to detail that spoke of genuine care for their emotional well-being. Every aspect of their visit had been planned to minimize stress and maximize their ability to focus on what truly mattered. The door handle felt warm under Dr. Matthews' hand as she prepared to turn it. William and Kate exchanged one final look, a moment of silent communication that encompassed years of shared experiences and mutual support. They had faced many challenges together as a couple, from the intense scrutiny of their courtship to the pressures of royal life, but this was different. This was about something deeper and more fundamental than duty or public expectation. Kate straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin, drawing on reserves of strength she had developed over years of public appearances and personal challenges. William placed his free hand on her shoulder, a gesture of support that had become instinctive over their years together. They were as ready as they could possibly be for whatever awaited them on the other side of that door. Dr. Matthews began to turn the handle, the soft click of the mechanism seeming to echo through the quiet corridor like the sound of destiny itself. The door opened slowly, revealing a scene that would be forever etched in William and Kate's hearts and memories. Soft afternoon sunlight streamed through the large windows, casting a warm, golden glow across the room that seemed to transform the medical equipment into something less frightening and more hopeful. The gentle beeping of monitors created a steady rhythm that somehow felt reassuring rather than alarming, like a mechanical lullaby keeping time with the miracle of life itself. In the center of the room, surrounded by the most advanced medical technology that modern medicine could provide, lay a sight that made both William and Kate's breath catch in their throats. Their worst fears had not materialized. Instead, what they saw before them was a testament to the incredible resilience of the human spirit and the power of love to overcome even the most daunting challenges. The tears they had been holding back for 3 days finally began to flow freely down their faces, but these were not tears of sorrow or despair. Kate's hand flew to her mouth as she stepped forward, her composure finally cracking after days of maintaining a brave front for the cameras and the public. William's arm went around her shoulders immediately, but his own eyes were bright with unshed tears as he took in the scene before them. The medical team stepped back respectfully, understanding that this moment belonged to the family and that their presence, while necessary, should be as unobtrusive as possible. The specialized nurses who had been maintaining their vigil smiled warmly as William and Kate approached, their faces reflecting the same mixture of relief and joy that was now evident on the royal couple's faces. These medical professionals had seen every possible outcome in their years of caring for critically ill patients, but they never grew tired of witnessing moments like these when hope triumphed over fear and love proved stronger than the worst that life could throw at a family. William's voice cracked as he spoke his first words. The carefully maintained composure that years of royal training had instilled in him completely abandoned in the face of overwhelming emotion. Kate's gentle sobs filled the quiet room, but they were sounds of pure relief and gratitude rather than grief. In that moment, they were not the Prince and Princess of Wales, not representatives of the crown or symbols of duty and service. They were simply two people who had been given the greatest gift imaginable. The medical equipment that had seemed so intimidating from the corridor now appeared as instruments of hope and healing. Each monitor and machine was working perfectly, displaying numbers and readouts that told a story of recovery and progress rather than decline and despair. Dr. Matthews explained quietly that everything they were seeing was exactly what the medical team had hoped for, that the procedures had been successful beyond their most optimistic projections. Kate moved closer, her motherly instincts taking over as she gently reached out to touch what she had feared she might never be able to touch. Again, her hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from the overwhelming emotion of the moment. William stood beside her, his own eyes never leaving the scene before them, as if he needed to convince himself that what he was seeing was real and not some cruel dream from which he would soon wake. The afternoon light continued to stream through the windows, creating an almost ethereal atmosphere in the room. The sounds of the busy hospital outside seemed to fade away, leaving only the gentle rhythm of the medical equipment and the soft voices of the medical team as they explained what they were seeing. Every number on every monitor told the same story of hope and healing, of a situation that had seemed desperate just days before but had now transformed into something miraculous. William found himself thinking about the phone call that had started. This journey, how different this moment was from what he had feared they would be facing. The voice on the other end of the line had been professional and caring, but the initial news had seemed so overwhelming that he had struggled to process it. Now, standing in this room filled with warm sunlight and the quiet hum of life-sustaining technology, he could barely remember why he had been so afraid. Kate's tears continued to flow, but her face was radiant with joy and relief. She had spent 3 sleepless nights imagining this moment, trying to prepare herself for every possible outcome. But nothing could have prepared her for the reality of seeing her worst fears transformed into her greatest blessings. The medical team had worked miracles, but more than that, they had restored her faith in the power of hope and the importance of never giving up. The specialized equipment in the room represented years of medical research and technological advancement. But in that moment it felt like so much more than just machines and monitors. Each piece of equipment was a symbol of human ingenuity and compassion, of the countless doctors and researchers who had devoted their lives to making moments like these possible. William and Kate had supported medical research through their charitable work for years, but they had never imagined they would be on the receiving end of such advanced care. Dr. Matthews spoke quietly about the recovery process and what they could expect in the coming days and weeks. Her words were filled with optimism and confidence, a stark contrast to the careful uncertainty that had colored their conversations just days before. The medical team had achieved something remarkable, but they had also learned that the strength and determination of the family had played a crucial role in the success of the treatment. As the afternoon wore on, William and Kate remained in the room, reluctant to leave this space where their worst fears had been transformed into their greatest joy. The medical staff continued their careful monitoring, but the atmosphere in the room had changed completely from one of crisis to one of celebration and gratitude. The beeping of the monitors had become a symphony of hope, each sound a reminder that miracles do happen when skilled medical professionals combine their expertise with the power of love and determination. The warm sunlight continued to fill the room, and both William and Kate knew that this moment would be forever marked in their hearts as the day when everything changed, when their darkest fears gave way to their brightest hopes, and when they learned that sometimes the most difficult journeys lead to the most beautiful destinations.